So Jai Gurudev, everybody. Today we are going to continue with the subject matter of speaking about the various gurus of Sikhism. And so before we go into it, I want to explain a little bit the objective of this and why we're doing it in the first place. Now, in the lecture that happened earlier in the week with Vanamali and Titagamana Dasi, they did a little bit of an introduction into what Sikhism is, some of the sort of foundational facts about the religion to give some context. And so it's going to go on YouTube, I think, later on, and you can watch that if you want to get a more robust summary. But the idea is basically this. Sikhism was founded by Guru Nanak, and what Guru Nanak did upon founding the idea of Sikhism was bring in influence from a lot of the existing Hindu saints, even Muslim saints of his time, who were influential figures. He brought in a lot of their teachings and sayings into what eventually would become their scriptural canon. Okay? And so what he was doing was, he was drawing statements from that tradition that were compatible with his realization, his vision of reality, and molding a tradition out of a marriage of that and his own realizations. Now, in some sense, Guruji does something very similar, right? Because he's constantly drawing inspiration from these various traditions, various saintly personalities, but of course, presenting them through the lens of his own perception of reality and his own convictions, right? And so the same way that Guru Nanak took the words of the saints and presented them in a Sikhi lens, in a sense, we are reversing the gaze. We are taking the statements of the Sikhi gurus and presenting them through our lens. How would we see such things, and how do they hold relevance to us and to our devotional life? And the reason that they are incredibly relevant to our devotional life is because their entire tradition is essentially based on Guru Bhakti. Right? There may be some differentiations here and there into the concept of how it is theologically mapped out, but frankly speaking, the lived out practical Sikhism is and especially in early Sikhism, is very hard to distinguish from what we're trying to do. Yeah. Obviously, it is true that as traditions grow older and as they evolve, actually they tend to harden. So harden means that the boundaries become more defined, right? And so as they become more defined, you start to see more separation and more distinction, because there is also a desire to distinguish oneself, right? You start to almost emphasize the points of separation more than the points of unity, because you want to have a distinct identity and a distinct tribe, right? It's the same reason that countries have borders. Yeah, there was a time where there were no lines on any map deciding which country was which, right? With time, these things harden and these identities become, let's say, distinguished from one another, okay? So I really want to capture the essential spirit of Sikhism, the essential spirit of the Gurbani, the words of the Guru, more so than any sort of socio-cultural, let's say, analysis of Sikhism, especially in modern days, okay? So a lot of lectures have already happened on several of these gurus by members of the knowledge team from not only this period now, the festive period, but also, I believe, Navaratri it was, or I can't remember when it was. I think it was Navaratri, right? So we have, Sikhism is founded on the idea that there were 10 living gurus who were then succeeded by the 11th and eternal guru, which is the scripture, the Guru Granth Sahib. Okay? And the 10 gurus are, starting from Guru Nanak from 1469 all the way to Guru Gobind Singh in 1708. And from 1708 onwards, we have the Guru Granth Sahib, the scripture, which compiles teachings from several of these gurus, although not all, and, as I said, sayings from saints that were contemporaries of Guru Nanak or preceding Guru Nanak, who he drew inspiration from. Okay? So, some of these had remarkable contributions to the construct of what Sikhism became. Today, we're going to talk about Guru Har Rai, and Guru Har Rai is the seventh Guru. And so by the time that he comes about and the time he takes on the mantle of the Guru, a lot of things have already been established by the previous Gurus, naturally speaking. So he's not got a blank canvas to work upon. He has not only the theological background that Guru Nanak set, but also a lot of social endeavors. That means food distribution, healthcare, armies, these sorts of things to deal with and to navigate. Okay, so we're going to talk about that as well. And how they constructed, in a sense, a system of religious life. Because there are, again, some interesting points and interesting parallels. Okay. I'm tempted to go a little bit into some of these, but maybe not. How strong is the temptation? You see, there's some of them, I would say especially the life of Guru Angad, because Guru Angad being the first successor to Guru Nanak, in a sense, this principle of Guru Bhakti that we're talking about is most seen in Guru Angad. Because Guru Nanak isn't a Guru Bhakta. He's a Guru, right? And so from him stems this tradition. And so, of course, Guru Nanak's intrigue and Guru Nanak's interest is, of course, in his realizations, so his teachings. But Guru Angad is in his example, in the way he lives out that relationship with Guru Nanak. And so in many senses, Guru Angad is, for me, the foundation for understanding Sikhi, for understanding the actual mentality that one has to have. Because even the reason why he was given the name Guru Angad is because he was seen as an extension, an ang, a limb, of Guru Nanak, right? And so what he was famous for was extreme humility, obedience, and faith. So much so that often Guru Nanak's own sons, who were also, let's say, exalted devotees in their own right, were made to look comparatively like some arrogant, conceited people. Because he would give an instruction, a request, and the sons would say, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. And by the time they're saying it doesn't make sense, Guru Angad's already doing it. Right? Or he would give an instruction and they would say, why do we have to do it? We are a little more skilled than this task requires. Why not give it to someone who is not as skilled as us? Not to waste our talents on such a lowly task. Meanwhile, Guru Angad has already done it. Yeah? And so you start to see some of the pitfalls of a guru-disciple relationship, some of the mindsets you cannot afford to adopt. Yeah? And by the end of Guru Nanak's life, and this is an important point, he had established a very strong community. And an outsider came to that community and said to him, you must be very happy with your accomplishments. How much you have established, how many followers you have. And he said, you think I have many followers? I have many disciples. And he says, so many. They're all here serving you. He said, I invite you to spend the day with me. And so the guest did. And to cut a long story short, Guru Nanak tested all of his disciples. They were used to having this loving guru, this loving father figure. So he calls all of his disciples and says, we're going to go for a walk. But he adopts the mood of a very angry, scary person. The weather changes. Thunderstorm. From the weather changing, many disciples decided to stay home. From his mood, many other disciples decided to stay away. And so gradually the numbers start thinning out. As he goes on this walk with the disciples, suddenly they start seeing bronze coins manifesting on the ground. They're like, wow, the Guru is rewarding us for our faith. So they collect the coins and go home. The ones who stay, silver coins start to come. They're like, he rewarded us for our patience. Silver coins, off they go. They continue walking, gold coins. And they say, wow, he rewarded us for our perseverance. Gold coins, and they go home. Only 2 were left. So it was Bhai Buddha and Bhai Lena. Bhai Lena was Guru Angad's name before he was named the Guru. So there was only 2 left. And they get to a swamp, to a crematorium rather, sorry. And when they get to the crematorium, they see a corpse, a dead body covered, ready for cremation. But it had been there for some time. And so the stink was very intense. The smell was awful. And Guru Nanak turns to both of his disciples and he says, I want you to eat the body. And there is hesitation in Bhai Buddha. Bhai Buddha is a young man at this point, and he hesitates. He doesn't say no, he doesn't turn away, but he hesitates. And Bhai Lena says to him, should I start at the head or at the feet? And he says, start at the feet. And so he goes there without a second thought, uncovers it, and what he finds when he uncovers it is prasad and a sweet aroma. Right? So Guru Nanak turns to the guest who had walked with him this whole way to observe all of this and says, I have one disciple. Not what you saw, not the show, not what appears to be a thriving community of many disciples. I have many aspirants, people who are trying to do something. But if you want to say that I have done something very successful, I have but one disciple, Bhai Lena, who he then appoints as his guru, right? Now, I wanted to tell this story to set a tone, yeah? We're not talking about anything superficial here. When we talk about the guru-disciple relationship as it lives out, as it is demonstrated in the Sikhi tradition, okay? And you can see parallels to what we think or experience, let's put it like this, yeah? If I told you that this was Guruji walking with a bunch of us, perhaps apart from the corpse, everything else would be very believable, right? And I'm saying the corpse is not believable from wishful thinking. Please don't ask me to eat a corpse, Guruji. There are other ways to prove surrender. Hopefully. Right, so anyway, moving on. So you have Guru Arjan. Guru Arjan is usually attributed as one of the primary builders, creators, compilers of what eventually became the Guru Granth Sahib, right, the scripture. So his primary responsibility was to join the writings, the sayings of his predecessors into the near complete manuscript. There were a few alterations that were still done afterwards, okay? And he was, Guru Arjan Dev, the father of Guru Hargobind. So a lot of these are also family relations, okay? And Guru Hargobind was the grandfather of Guru Har Rai, which we will go into today, okay? So Guru Har Rai, the seventh Sikh Guru, is the grandson of the sixth Sikh Guru, Guru Hargobind Singh, and he is the great-grandson of Guru Arjan Dev, okay? Good. So let's go into it then. So Guru Har Rai was born in 1630, and it's important that he was born in Kiratpur, because Kiratpur Sahib is a town, a city, that was actually founded and established by Guru Hargobind, right? His grandfather. Because again, part of what they were trying to establish was not only a faith-based community, but also, how can I put it? A complete community. So it means that there were certain principles that were embodied in the Sikh community that were that you have to marry spiritual life with material life. They didn't believe in a harsh separation between these two principles, right? And so as a result of that, they were very much interested in I would say, the mundane concerns of people, right? So creating a town, education, food, healthcare, all of these things were part of their faith-driven efforts. Okay, it isn't like you have some religious groups that say our concern is only relationship with God, faith, ritual, church, temple, whatever it may be. We leave the rest to mundane society to organize, right? A separation almost between state and church. Yeah, so it wasn't so defined, so separated in Sikh culture, and so there was a concentrated effort to provide a complete system. And so Kiratpur Sahib is the town established by his grandfather, the sixth Guru. So as I said, he was the grandson of Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, and he became the seventh Sikh Guru at the age of 14. Okay, he had already been earmarked for the position when he was 8 years old. Okay, and he became at the age of 14 because his grandfather passed away. Yeah, you will see that when it comes time for Guru Har Rai to pass away, he passed away at the age of 31, Guru Har Rai. His successor was even younger. So we'll get to that a little later today. But it is something that I want to focus on before we finish today's lecture. This idea of age and time. Because once you see how much someone like Guru Har Rai achieved and yet passed away at the age of 31, you maybe start to rethink the concept of time and how much of it we have and how much we can do with it. Right? Which is not, again, the first time that we've had a conversation like this. You have the same when you study the life of Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya passed away at the age of 32, 1 year difference. Right? And what he achieved in 32 years is incredible. Right? And so it really only can happen when there is a mentality that says there is no time to waste. When there is a mentality of, I will serve so long as I have energy to serve, then there is no limit to what you can achieve. Because it means you're doing your maximum. And it's not about physical maximum, it's the mental maximum. It's the attitude of maximum. Because bodies have limitations. You will get tired, you will get sick, you will need rest. All of that is fine. But it's the mentality of, I want to serve and I will continue to serve. When the mentality says, time to stop, not the body. When the body says time to rest, all good. When the mind says no more service, is when you start to need 60 years, 80 years, maybe 100 years to maybe do something that can compare to these persons. Right? So they are rare. I don't say it's common. I don't say it's easy, but it's possible. Yeah. He had an elder brother called Dhir Mal. The reason I mention him is because later on he will have some degree of relevance in his story, and that is because, unfortunately, and this is a trend in several of the Sikh Gurus, a lot of jealousy when it comes to the succession, right? When it comes to who has the favorable eye of the Guru. Yeah. Once again, parallels are clear. This is a human condition. It's not a Hindu condition or a Sikh condition, nor anything of the sort, right? And so it is worthwhile to explore this, and we will a little later on. Now, when Guru Har Rai had to take on this responsibility after Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, he kept a lot of what he had established. He had, of course, the opportunity to change. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because his nature was a little different. So Guru Har Rai's nature was a little different from his grandfather's nature, although inspired by it. Guru Hargobind had been very proactive in establishing a military element to the Sikh community. Okay, it is one of his hallmarks of his era, of his time as the Guru. Okay, because, as we always know, eventually hostile people come around to challenge any and all traditions, sometimes intellectually, other times physically, right? And so the physical challenge eventually arrived at his doorstep. You have to understand that the time in which this was happening was, of course, Mughal-led India. So we had Islamic rulers in majority of North India, you had the Hindu community coexisting side by side, a smaller Buddhist community, and then this growing, emerging Sikh community, okay? And they were essentially rising out of what is modern-day Pakistan, okay? And so the Mughal influence in that region was strong, yeah? And they had a lot of conflicts. So Guru Hargobind waged several, maybe you wouldn't go all the way to call them wars, but they had conflicts with the Mughal emperors of the time. There was enmity there, okay? Why? Because at the time, the Mughal emperors were not very tolerant of other traditions, especially not in their immediate vicinity, right? And so one thing is to combat a pre-existing tradition that is widespread. Another thing is to stop an emergent tradition. So if something new is coming, you want to stop it as soon as possible because it's weaker in its early days, right? So Guru Hargobind recognized this threat, and so he established, as we said, this military element to the tradition, yeah? And this was kept by Guru Har Rai. The reason why I want to highlight this, because Guru Har Rai was an extreme pacifist. Yeah? He had an incredibly soft heart, Guru Har Rai. He had no tastes for these things. But he kept it nonetheless under his leadership, the military force of the Sikhs at the time. Because one thing is being of a certain nature, another thing is having common sense. And sometimes people fall into the trap of idealism. They envision an ideal world and then try to enact it, when actually that's one of the most clear forms of ungroundedness. Because it's a rejection of reality as it is, whether you like it or not, whether you find it to be ideal or not. So it's one thing to strive for the ideal, and especially in your spiritual endeavors. It's another thing to act as if that ideal already exists before it does. Do you understand that difference? Right? And so what he is, I'm a pacifist, and I'll promote the principles of pacifism. But I also recognize that everyone around me is not. And so I cannot afford to do this to my community, to tell them all to put down their weapons, only to then be slaughtered. Because what is the value of pacifism if it does not protect that which it is born and designed to protect? Pacifism is virtuous only in so much as it protects life. But if pacifism will lead to the loss of life, then it is in fact acting against its principle. Right? And he recognized this. And this is why I want to highlight this transitory idea, because there's a clash of natures, but not a clash of wisdom. Understand? So his grandfather's nature was different than his, but their understanding of what was necessary was the same. You see here that this continuation of the military force was done in spite of Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji having blessed Guru Har Rai with the boon that they will never have to go into battle. So he said, you will never be in war. I bless you for that. And despite that, he could have said, well then, wonderful. Let's disband all of this. Let's not bother with any of this. But he didn't. And this is incredibly important for two reasons. First of all, foresight. So Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji blessed him not to go into battle. But what about his successor? You cannot set yourself up for failure in that way. Second, just because you've been given a blessing to not have to do something, doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Why? Because everyone else will look to you for an example, for inspiration. Now imagine the Guruji will tell you, I've blessed you now, I've given you a boon. And the boon is, you cannot collect any karma. Okay? Pretty good boon. No more karma possible for you. You're karma exempt. Okay? Ask yourself, what would be your next step? Okay? Maybe on a good day, you'll bow down to him and say thanks. On a bad day, you've already booked your tickets to Las Vegas. Okay? Because why not? Zero consequence. And so everything is fine. At least karmically speaking. Morally speaking is another argument. But karmically speaking, I'm exempt. I'm out of the system, guys. And so you see, the problem with that is that if I start to live out that reality, what am I teaching anyone else? Of what value is my life to anyone? The answer is zero. Maybe I will be an inspiration of what not to be. Right? Maybe there's some value in that. But I think that's not what's rare in this world. Right? If you had to choose between being an inspiration of what to be or what not to be, I would encourage you to choose what to be, because that's far more rare. You have thousands of them, thousands of saints, but you have billions of the others. It's not really balanced, right? And so, again, the wisdom of Guru Har Rai is, I may be blessed, but that doesn't mean I'm irresponsible. I may be blessed and exempt. That doesn't mean I can abandon my leadership over these people. The example that I set to those in my vicinity. Now, he was a leader. You don't have to be a leader to set an example. You don't have to be a leader to be seen by others. Right? And so it doesn't matter what privileges you are given, the necessity to set those aside and behave in a way that is both inspirational and relevant to those around you is incredibly important. Because if not, the level of disconnect and unrelatability between you and your peers leads to a huge decrease in the value that you bring to this world. And given that our life, our devotional life, is intended for service, then you should be taking every opportunity possible to maximize the value that you bring to this world by your existence. This is the mindset of a servant. I want to maximize the value that I bring to this world by my existence, which means my state of being, my conduct, my words, all of it has to be factored in, irrespective of the privileges and blessings that I may have. The same way one can use the truth to help someone or to harm someone, you may use your blessings for good or for bad. It depends on your wisdom, your mindset of the role and responsibility you have at any given moment. Understood? Okay. Please see the wisdom of a 14-year-old Guru Har Rai. It's not so mundane, it's not so simple. Oh, my granddad did it, so I'll do it too. If you taught a 14-year-old, option A, a lot of work and headache. Option B, I bless you, you don't have to do any of that work. Which one do you take? Most 14-year-olds that I knew would say B. This option here is fantastic. Yeah? But not Guru Har Rai. That's why I wanted to highlight this point. So as I said earlier, Guru Har Rai was famous for his soft heart. Yeah, this was his nature. Compassionate. In some Sikh circles, he is often referred to as the eco-guru. Why? Because he was concerned with the environment, with animals, with flowers and gardens, compared to his grandfather, who was warrior, right? Now, his delicate and compassionate nature, ironically, came from his many years learning from his grandfather. Now, how's that possible? If I just said his grandfather was a warrior and established an army and waged many battles, and yet Guru Har Rai was like this because of Guru Hargobind. And that's because you have to understand the philosophy of Miri Piri. So the idea of Miri Piri was established primarily again by Guru Hargobind. It's the idea that there are two natures to the Sikh, two pillars that it has to stand upon. And that is one that is, in a sense, worldly, spiritual, offensive, defensive, a warrior and a saint at the same time. Yeah? Two swords. One for offense, one for defense. One for the world, one for spirituality. With one, you're a warrior. With another, you're a saint. Okay? And this idea can be unpacked much more. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on it now, but it explains the complexity of character. What I mean by that is, it is sometimes too simple to characterize someone as having a single nature. Right? Although a nature may predominate, it doesn't mean that's all they are. So when you say, oh, Guru Har Rai was a very soft-hearted individual, I'm saying that not because he was exclusively a soft-hearted individual, but because he was primarily a soft-hearted individual. And those are two different things, right? And I'm, in general, as a human being, living in community, very much against the boxing in of people by labels. In the sense of, oh, he's very much like this, he's very much like that. Because most people that I know are way more complex than that. Oh, he's very introverted, he's very extroverted. Doesn't that depend on the circumstances? And if it does, then what is the person after all? A blend of these things? So maybe you don't put people in boxes, right? And so similarly, in this situation, Hargobind had one side, which was this warrior. On the flip side, he had an immense love and care for all living beings, for all sentient things, right? And so I will tell a couple of stories that illustrate how Guru Har Rai learned from Guru Hargobind this mentality, this nature. So Guru Har Rai, I'll come back to that in a second. Guru Har Rai, he created many beautiful gardens in the various villages around, and he would visit and look at them and care for them, right? So one of his primary concerns, jokes apart, primary concerns was building gardens. Yeah. Why do you think he would do that? Genuine question. Why do you think he would do that? As an example to inspire, what were you saying? Beauty. Shots fired. Yes. You see, I like that answer. Let's go a little further into it. To create a garden and to maintain a garden, what do you need? Patience. What else? Love, care, right? Persistence, patience. You need knowledge, effort. You need so many qualities, actually. It's not a very simple thing. Not if you want to do it nicely, right? You need a lot of the qualities that everyone would need to navigate life. However, a garden is a safe environment. It's like a training ground. You understand my point? A training ground of nature, of beauty, of peace. It even gives you something in return. Yeah, flowers, vegetables, herbs, medicine, so many things. But it's a training ground to develop all the qualities you need to enact them in times when you're not in the garden. Gardens are in many ways gurus. Yeah, training facilities. Yeah, university of life. So Guru Har Rai, gardens everywhere. Yeah. He captured injured animals and he fed them, healed them, and he set them free. He was teaching them to coexist with the people, with each other. He also actually was one of the first people in the world ever who started this like a zoo of sorts, where he kept endangered species in the region to look after them and protect them. Right? Now, the point you made earlier is actually true. In that time, and not only in that time, it's somehow, how do I put this? A paradox. But the care for animals or for nature is both paramount to Hindus and simultaneously disregarded by Hindus. Because there is a very fine line that is not often balanced correctly between the Hindu idea that everything is divine and everything is worthy of love, and at the same time everything is temporary, transient, and to some extent irrelevant. It's the idea of Krishna saying that we change bodies like clothes, right? There is a cheapening that comes from that idea that in a sense has to be balanced with the idea that the body is yet a temple of God. So the body on the one hand is called the temple of God, on the other hand it's called clothes, right? And so you have a huge difference in value between those two things. Because you know how much labor it is to build a temple, maintain a temple, care for a temple, but clothes, you change them all the time and you have hundreds of it throughout your life, right? And so that is not often navigated well by Hindus in general, okay? When you then mix that with socioeconomic factors, you've got a problematic situation, Yeah? If money and resources are scarce, if education is scarce, and you mix in with this difficult paradox, you arrive at a lot of the things you witness when you go to India. Yeah? A simultaneous depth and richness that you will hardly find anywhere else, mixed with a disregard that you will rarely find anywhere else. It's the truth, right? But it's rooted in a vision, a framework, a lens through which you look at reality. And both sides of that coin are in some sense scriptural, divine. Krishna himself, right? But again, it doesn't mean that they've navigated it well. And Guru Har Rai, the Sikhs, had a great opportunity because they're emergent in that culture and tradition. And so as an emergent movement, what you always get is the opportunity to criticize the established movements, to point out the flaws. And that's why most movements, most things in the world are replaced by successors. There's constant evolution of thought, evolution of behavior, because a new one can look at the old one and say, you were doing that wrong. Let me learn from that mistake and do something better. Now, it may be that there is a corruption in human nature that eventually starts to corrupt the new thing also. And then the new one has to come and learn from those mistakes and correct. And it's a perpetual cycle, right? And that is true. You observe it in society across the board. But this was the Sikhs' time to correct some of the mistakes of their environment. Previously, in years gone by, we have done classes on the reformation that Adi Shankara brought to Hinduism, the reformation that Ramanuja brought. They were doing the same thing. They were looking at corrupt Brahmins, they were looking at corrupt ideologies, corrupt philosophies, and saying, this needs to change. Blank slate, right? So this is an ongoing process, and once again, we have another example of this, okay? So I had told you that there were examples in the life of Guru Hargobind that inspired this nature in Guru Har Rai, right? So first is the story of the beaten bird. So what this is that one day, Guru Hargobind Sahib was going on a walk with his disciples. And he paused for a moment to take care of some personal matters, and the disciples went to the side, and some birds came. And one of the birds specifically was being annoying, right? Circling around, meddling with what they were doing. And so one of his disciples took a stick and hit the bird. Yeah? Simple act, just to make it go away. But the next day, when they again came to the same place, Guru Hargobind noticed that there was a bird with a damaged wing, right? That was struggling to fly. And so he said, what happened to the bird? And the disciples told him, well, yesterday they were causing a disturbance, and so we hit the bird. And he scolded them. He told them, why did you do that? He takes the bird, cares for the bird, ties his wing, tries to mend the wing, and sets him free again. Right? A simple act. But to an impressionable child, which Guru Har Rai was, sometimes it's just one small thing like this that can imprint so deeply in you an attitude that is, no, you don't harm someone, you don't treat people this way, you rather care for them. Even animals, not humans. Right? And so again, that was one landmark moment. But the second and more important experience that he had with his grandfather was the story of the flower and the robes. So what it was, one day, Guru Har Rai went for a walk in a garden with his grandfather, Guru Hargobind. And as they were walking, Guru Hargobind noticed that there was a very rare flower that was out of season that had blossomed. And there was also a beautiful fruit tree, and so he was seeing this. And they went walking, and he had acknowledged this special flower. And they were happy and walking together, having a great time. When they went past it and circled back around, Guru Hargobind noticed that the flower was no longer there. And so he said to one of his companions that was with him, one of his disciples, what happened to the flower? It was a special, rare flower. What happened to it? And the disciple says to him, actually, your grandson, in his enthusiasm, walking around, it got caught in his clothes. And so it broke off from the stem, right? And at that moment, Guru Hargobind used it as an opportunity to teach something to his grandson. So he said to him the following. This is an excerpt, it was essentially a teaching on be careful, be mindful, be careful of what you do out of a lack of awareness. Because by not paying attention to your environment, you have broken this flower, right? So, in the Guru Granth Sahib, we have this utterance of Guru Hargobind. It says, "Do not utter even a single harsh word. Your true Lord and Master abides in all. Do not break anyone's heart. These are all priceless jewels. The minds of all are like precious jewels. To harm them is not good at all. If you desire your beloved, then do not break anyone's heart." Later on in the lecture today, I'm going to show you a quote from Guruji that echoes these sentiments, but in his own words. Okay? But you see, this is what makes the nature of Guru Har Rai. Yeah? The level of care, he says, never break someone's heart. Don't harm anyone. Don't cause pain and suffering to people. Because your Lord and Master abides in the hearts of all. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? That he is in the hearts of everyone. And so at some point, these words stop to just be words. They have to mean something. And I know it's not easy. It's not at all. It's actually quite intimidating to think in these terms. If you tell someone, just be respectful to everyone, that's okay. But if you say, I want you to live your life thinking that the Lord that you so love is sitting in the heart of everyone and treat them accordingly, that's intimidating. That's a lot of lords that I have to serve, love, care for, and most importantly, not harm and disrespect. Right? Now, you task me to do that when I don't have even control over my vehicle. I don't have control over my mind. We have an even more problematic situation. And then there's another problematic situation added on top of that. The vessel in which my Lord is residing is also out of control. So I have a very weird behaving Lord in front of me. It's my Lord, but doesn't behave like my Lord. And I have my Lord, and I don't behave like my Lord either, and somehow we have to not harm each other. So it's like, we just look at each other, no one wants to move first. Yeah. It's pressure. And yet, its lack of convenience, its difficulty, in no sense makes it any less necessary. Spirituality is not always convenient. Yeah. It's simple. This is a very simple principle. Don't hurt anyone. Simple instruction. No complexity to it. Doesn't mean simple to execute. Yeah. As Guru Har Rai took on his position, lived out his life, he had challenges. Those challenges came, as I said, in the form of jealousy, primarily. So Guru Har Rai's elder brother, Dhir Mal, he was burning in jealousy. Why? Because his grandfather, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, was praising Guru Har Rai so much. So the Sangha, they all suspected he's going to name him as the next Guru. But the reason this upset Dhir Mal so much was A, Dhir Mal was the elder brother, and B, Dhir Mal had been given the Adi Granth, so the scripture as had been compiled by Guru Arjan Dev, to protect. So he was the safekeeper of the scripture. of the Sikhs. And so he thought, because I've been given this important responsibility, naturally, he assumed I will be the next Guru after Guru Hargobind. And this is a very common mistake people make. It's jumping to conclusions. And it's often a slippery slope fallacy. It's the idea that you think one thing will lead to another, but the leaps you make are exponential, right? So you see one sign and you think, therefore, this must be the next one. Yeah? Small little signs, and you make a leap in your mind to say, this is where I'm going to end up. He gave me a book to look after, therefore I'm the next Guru. Understand? Oh, Guruji looked at me and said this, therefore I'm now allowed to do this. I'll give you an example of that. Somebody goes to Darshan and says, Guruji, can I be your devotee? And he says, yes, you may be my devotee. Then they come to the Swami and say, from this statement, initiate me now. And we say, okay, but do you meet all the criteria? No, but Guruji said I should be a devotee. Huge leap here. He said you should be a devotee. That doesn't exempt you from the process of becoming a devotee, unless he exempts you. He didn't exempt you. He said, become my devotee. That means follow the requirements to become a devotee. So simple. And yet, the jump happens all the time. Right? Guruji, can I do this project? Yes, you can. Guruji has blessed me to do this project. You must now support me because I have Guruji's blessing. No. You said you wanted to do the project. You said, am I allowed to do the project? And he said, yes, you're allowed to do the project. Allowed is not the same thing as I bless you to do this project. Take all the resources from everyone and everywhere else to support you in this project. This is the most important project in Bhakti Marga right now, bar none, because I gave it to you and you alone. That's what people hear. Right? Big leap. Right? This happened with Dhir Mal. I have been given this responsibility. Therefore, I am the most trusted. If I'm the most trusted, it means I must be the best. If I'm the best, it means I must be Guru. Yeah. This happens on every level. Guruji comes to you, he blesses you with the opportunity to serve him. Maybe you get a title of some sort. Now you're a country coordinator somewhere. And you think, I made it. Right? I am the glorious supreme leader of country so-and-so, right? First of all, it only takes a few short months before you ever regret thinking that this should be something you want to do in your life. And you start to see it as a responsibility, maybe on a good day an honor, but certainly rarely a pleasure, right? But that is the joke, isn't it? Everybody wants responsibility until they get it. And in fact, the best ones, the best leaders, the best responsible persons are the ones that didn't go running after it. Often. Not always, but often. And so I think that there is a need sometimes to do the opposite. Instead of taking evidence or suggestion to your greatness and making a huge leap to think I am even greater, we should actually develop the tendency to do the opposite. To think that despite evidence suggesting my greatness, I recognize my flaws. I rather don't want to lose sight of the flaws I still have to work on. It doesn't mean that I ignore my strengths and that I become now irrationally negative. That's not the point. But it is that when I am tempted to think I am great, I must remind myself of my deficiencies. Because it's the only way I stay grounded. And people will tempt you to think you're great. Those who want something from you, they will tempt you. Those who want what you have, they will denigrate you. One way or another, it will happen. And you have to have the wisdom to counterbalance these things. If everyone's telling you you're rubbish, remind yourself of your strength. If everyone tells you you're amazing, remind yourself of your weakness. Because you have to stay grounded. And you can't let yourself be blown into these fantasies, positive or negative. Because you have to understand one thing about human nature. 99% of the time, people act in a way that is completely motivated by self-interest. 1%, maybe, will be pure. 99% of the time, people are motivated by self-interest. Everybody has their agenda. Everybody has their desires, their story, their needs, their wants. And they have some kind of pathway to getting it. And if it involves trying to win your favor or trying to step over you or whatever it is, positive or negative, they'll do it. Without a second thought. They'll do it. And if you're naive, you'll trust it. If you're naive, you'll believe them. Oh, this is a person that is 99% pure and 1%, not a saint. 1% is not good. You're very generous. You're very generous. And I say this not as a call to pessimism. I say it as a recalibration, if you know what that means. You have to recalibrate your mindset. Because once you start to accept certain foundational things about this world and this reality, there is a natural consequence of behavioral changes you need to adopt. Guruji looks at us and he sees immense potential in all of us, right? Others we wouldn't be here. However, has any of you ever heard Guruji say, I don't trust any of you? Okay. And yet he's the most loving, wise person any of us know. And yet, without any hesitation, he says, I don't trust any of you. Not just the ones who walked in here today for the first time. Me too. I don't trust any of you. Okay? Why would he say such a thing if it was 99% pure, everything we do? Right? We're just humans. But let me rephrase that. We're not just humans. We're far more than that. But, there is always the annoying but. We're far more than that. We are divine. We are all of these immense, wonderful things. We're a spark of God. But we don't know it. And I don't mean information. We don't realize it, right? So it's just a flaw in the system, an error in the program. We don't know who we are. And until we know who we are, we can't be trusted. Because the version of ourselves that we think we are is egoistic. It's self-absorbed. It's self-interested. And it will stab anyone in the back when it needs to. And if you don't believe me, study history. Yeah. And once you've done that, return to positivity. I'll tell you why. Yes, I'm joking, but I'm also not. I'll tell you why. The cold facts they're called cold because they're cold. They don't really inform you how to live your life in the best way. But they tell you truth. And sometimes you need to put a warm blanket together with the truth to make it palatable. Yeah? So I'll give you an example. The Bhagavad Gita is full of hierarchies. It's full of them. This kind of person is better than this kind of person. The Bhakti yogi is better than the Jnani yogi. Okay? Objectively. There is no ifs and buts. So let's say that this is truth. Does that mean you should live that way? Then now you walk around saying, I am a Bhakti yogi. Are you? No? Poor you. Are you even a karma yogi? Yeah. Oh my God, this person's not even a karma yogi. Yeah. Which God do you worship? And they're like, I don't know, Yahweh. You're like, Yahweh? Where's that in the Bhagavad Gita? Not even mentioned. Yeah. If at least you said like Indra or something, at least it's mentioned. Yeah. You think people don't behave like this? Not us. We're all very nice people. People do, right? And yet, everything I said, in some sense, is true. But the truth doesn't mean behavior. It's two different domains. Truth of knowledge, truth of principles, and truth of conduct, truth of relationship. Right? This is why one of the most beautiful teachings and most profound teachings in Sanatana Dharma and in Sikhism actually is how to use the truth. The truth is not objectively something wonderful. It depends how it is used and for what purpose. So if I use the truth that Bhakti Yoga is superior to denigrate you, I'm an idiot. Understand? Because I've taken one principle of truth and manifested it, ignoring the other statement in Bhagavad Gita that says, be humble. Don't disturb the minds of people and inspire them by your devotional work. I can't cherry pick the truth. I have to live it in its totality. So I have to juggle the fact that Bhakti yogis are superior to karma yogis, and at the same time, I am forbidden from acting like I'm superior. Understand? And when you marry these two, you might end up with a wise devotee. Yeah? The paradox that the greatest being in all of existence is the greatest servant. That's God. That's Guruji. You understand that? That the greater you are actually manifests behaviorally as even greater service unto others. The humility, not that he acts as sovereign to others, as a dictator to others, but as a servant. Yeah? This needs to be navigated properly. How you take principles and make them behavioral. Yeah? So, Dhir Mal didn't know how to do that. His elder brother. And we see in the Guru Granth Sahib in Ang 308, one whose heart is filled with jealousy of others never comes to any good. Yeah. And we know that to be true from our own experiences. Don't need to read it in scripture. No good comes from that. Guru Har Rai was very compassionate, and nowhere is this shown more than in the story of Dara Shikoh. So he was the eldest son of Emperor Shah Jahan. So Emperor Shah Jahan was the Mughal emperor at the time. He was a Muslim, and he had 4 sons. And the eldest son was Dara Shikoh. And the third son was Aurangzeb, who eventually became the succeeding emperor. And there's another story with him I'll tell in a little bit. Now, Aurangzeb specifically and Emperor Shah Jahan, his father, were very problematic figures, historically speaking, for other religious movements. Okay? So they were both very industrious for raising their own community, and they were very successful in doing so, but they were notoriously famous for their bigotry towards other faiths. Okay? Emperor Shah Jahan had many conflicts with the 6th Guru, Guru Hargobind Sahibji. They were, in a sense, enemies. Okay? So his grandfather, Guru Har Rai's grandfather, had a lot of enmity with Emperor Shah Jahan. Okay? The problem is, one day, Aurangzeb, his third son, poisoned his eldest son, Dhir Mal, his own brother. Why? Same thing as Dhir Mal. He was jealous, and he knew that Dhir Mal was going to be the next emperor after Shah Jahan. And he says, I don't accept. So he poisoned him. And Emperor Shah Jahan immediately tried to find all the doctors, physicians, anyone he could to cure his son. But he couldn't find the proper method, the proper medicine. But someone told him, Guru Har Rai and the Sikhs, they have advanced healthcare at their community. They have these medicine centers. They have a lot of knowledge of medicine. Maybe they will help. But you have to see the dilemma for Emperor Shah Jahan. Because the Guru, the young boy, Guru Har Rai, the grandson of his sworn enemy, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, now he has to beg for his help to save his son. And he does it. He writes a letter to Guru Har Rai asking him for help. I need this medicine, I need to heal my son. He explains the problem. And Guru Har Rai has indeed got the right medicine to cure him, and he gives it to them. So he gives the medicine, no question. And the son is healed. He was criticized by his fellow peers. So Guru Har Rai is criticized by the Sikhs because they have lived in just the years before, it wasn't a long time ago, battles, conflict with Emperor Shah Jahan. Lives were lost, right? There's a lot of enmity there. And yet he, without a second thought, helps him and heals his son. Yeah? And he explained to his disciples, therefore, Guru Har Rai, he said, with one hand man breaks flowers, and with one hand offers them. But the flowers perfume both hands alike. The axe cuts the sandal tree, yet the sandal perfumes the axe. The Guru ought therefore to return good for evil. You cut the sandalwood tree with your axe, you kill the tree, and the tree perfumes your axe with its scent. You crush the flower, and the flower perfumes your hand in return. And so he told his disciples, therefore, we should return evil with good. Again, beautiful and tough, difficult to do. At this time, he was barely 20 years old. Maybe he was profiting from some form of innocence of youth. But good. To everyone's credit, to everyone's inspiration. And so he helped Emperor Shah Jahan, who in turn promised to never wage war on the Sikhs again, out of gratitude for his act. However, this was not a promise kept by his successor, Aurangzeb, who shortly after managed to succeed his father anyway, even after his failed attempt to kill his older brother. And Aurangzeb had animosity towards Guru Har Rai because of what he did. He tried to kill his older brother. Guru Har Rai saved his older brother. His dad then says peace towards Guru Har Rai, no more battle. So Aurangzeb was upset by all of this. Guru Har Rai is his enemy. Right? So, this leads to one of the more tough moments in Guru Har Rai's life, one of the more tough episodes in his life, where you see what I said earlier. People are not simple. I cannot sit and tell you Guru Har Rai only had a soft heart and was only compassionate and sweet. He was primarily a man of a soft heart and compassionate. But when it was time, he could be absolutely uncompromising. And I'll explain how. So he had two sons, Guru Har Rai. One of them was Baba Ram Rai, the elder son. And one day, Aurangzeb wanted to kill Guru Har Rai and the Sikh community. So he sent his army towards Kiratpur to wage war. But you remember the boon that Guru Har Rai had? Right? No battle. So what happened? The armies of Aurangzeb all got cholera before they reached the city. So they turned back. There was no battle. Right? And he realized that historically we're consistently struggling in our battles against the Sikhs. Something always comes up. It's weird. And so he decided to do a slightly different approach. He wanted to try to understand a bit more what was going on, a bit more about their nature. So he invited Guru Har Rai to his court. He said, "You come to me then." And he veiled it with a very nice invitation, all very pleasant and whatever else. And he had two intentions. One was, let me find out who he is. Maybe eventually we can even strike some sort of a deal. Or if I don't like it, I'll just kill him. Right? But Guru Har Rai refused to go. He said, on principle, I will not go. Because of the atrocities that he has committed, Aurangzeb, I will not go. And I will not visit his court. However, he sent his son, the 11-year-old Baba Ram Rai. Why? He didn't suspect that there was going to be any attempt to kill them. Why he didn't go was not because of fear of being killed. It was because, as a leader of my community, I refuse to set the example, to support and to associate with somebody who has been doing what he has been doing. But he asks to meet us, I will also not fully refuse. So I will send a representative of my house. Yeah? And I will send a boy. And he sent Baba Ram Rai. Okay? When he got there, Aurangzeb was actually very impressed by him. Because Baba Ram Rai was, of course, blessed by Guru Har Rai. And so when he went there, different miracles started happening in the court of Aurangzeb. And Aurangzeb was unsure how to proceed because he was a staunch Muslim. At the same time, and he had enmity towards them, but at the same time, he was recognizing something special in this boy. Right? Then he asked Baba Ram Rai something. He said, there is a verse in the sayings of Guru Nanak that I have come across. This was Aurangzeb saying, that I would like you to explain it to me because it appears to be derogatory towards Muslims. Okay? I'll read you the verse. Oh. So the verse from Guru Nanak's hymns says the following: the clay of the Muslim's grave becomes clay for the potter's wheel. Pots and bricks are fashioned from it, and it cries out as it burns. And he said, this seems to be derogatory towards Muslims. Can you explain it? And Baba Ram Rai knew the real meaning of the verse. It was not derogatory towards Muslims. I'll explain to you in a second what it actually means. But he was afraid. He didn't know if he would convince him of that and if he could explain it properly. So he took another route. He said, actually, that hymn, that ang, was composed incorrectly. There's a word that was written wrongly. It doesn't say Musulman, rather it says Bayman, which means a dishonest person, not a Muslim person. So he changed the verse to appease Aurangzeb. Right? When he got home, because Aurangzeb released him, when he got home, word reached Guru Har Rai that what he had done. And Guru Har Rai excommunicated him immediately. He said, you are out of the Sikh community, and he told all of his Sikhs to never associate with him again. So, as I said, two natures. People are not one way only, right? He was absolutely uncompromising. Why? Because he said, as a Sikh, the most foundational thing you have is your Guru's word. If you are willing to sacrifice it to please any other, for any other reason, you are not a Sikh. And not only that, you have proven yourself to be a traitor to your Guru. Right? Again, tough. But if you ask me, hand to heart, do I think Guruji would not agree with that? You see, those of you who were there for Guruji's Christmas lunch satsang, he said something already along those lines. He said, you all think I'm one way, but I am another way. And he said something like, these guys know how I am, right? So as one of these guys that was sitting next to him at the time, I can only confirm. And it's not because he's two-faced. Nothing to do with that. It's because he's complex. As any human being, as any being is. As I said earlier, there may be a predominant nature, but people have many natures for many different moments, for many different purposes and situations. For example, your mother may be predominantly loving and sweet, but when the need arises, she can become ferocious, like Kali. Right? So what is the mother's nature now? Calm or ferocious? It's not so simple, because she is both, but maybe one predominantly and one circumstantially. Right? Is the Lord Shriman Narayana lying down, sleeping, relaxing, or is he Nishingadev ripping out your intestines? He is predominantly Shriman Narayana, but he may circumstantially be Nishingadev, right? When the need arises. Guruji is very sweet and loving, predominantly. But when the need arises, he will be how he needs to be. And it doesn't matter if you're his son or not. Don't be impressed, don't be affected by the fact that Baba Ram Rai was his son. Don't worry about that, because that means nothing. Yeah? To a mundane mindset, it means something. To the spiritual mindset, everybody was his son. There is no distinction. It's not, oh, Baba Ram Rai is my son, therefore he's more of a Sikh than the other disciple of mine or the other disciple. It doesn't work that way. Do you see Guruji thinking that his material, physical family are more his devotees than any of us? No, it doesn't work that way. We know it doesn't work that way. And so the same thing here. So the fact that it's his son, it hits you a bit more. He excommunicated his own son. Only because our paradigm is built that way. Yeah, to give priority to this kind of mindset. It's not like that. What he was in that moment was a disciple who lied about the Guru's word to please someone else. Okay? That's all. That's all you have to see it as. Okay? And he took a stance. Why? Why was it such a harsh stance? Because it was the first time anyone had done that. Understand? And so the first time merits a very harsh reaction to set a precedent. Because if you are soft on this type of thing, I've seen it firsthand, other people say, it's not that bad if you do it. You just get a tap on the wrist. And like that, the degradation of values and culture speeds up like this. I've seen it happen everywhere, including Bhakti Marga. There are rules. You break the rule and you want Guruji to be merciful. But in him being extra merciful, you have now encouraged the next 10 rule breakers. Because they're looking at that and saying, no problem. See, you can break rules. There's no real consequence because he's so cool. And when everyone starts to think that way, 5 years later, you have no rules. It's just in word only, not in reality. Because you know what? I'll be forgiven because God is great. You will be forgiven, but that doesn't mean you won't need to experience the consequence of your actions. And the next thing I have to tell you, never forget, you don't live in a bubble of isolation. So no matter what, you may think, but this is just between me and God. It's not. Baba Ram Rai went as the representative of the entire Sikh community. You understand? The precedent had to be set because everyone had all eyes on him. You see, I once had this conversation with Guruji. I'm not sure if I should share it, but let's go. Won't be the first time. I had a conversation with Guruji, and it was about rule breaking, right? And I shared with him a theory I have. I'm just thinking twice because this will be on YouTube afterwards as well. Okay. So, my theory was, you set the rules. Shastra sets the rules. Different traditions set the rules. Okay? And we vow to follow them. In the public eye, if any of them are broken, or if I tell anyone that I've broken that rule, I externalize and I make something public, right? Action must happen automatically. The universe, the cosmos, God responds to this, okay? Because your misdeed has been exposed to the eyes of others, either by word or by sight, by direct witness. And if they see no reaction to this, no consequence to this, it is the propagation of misdeeds, right? And so consequence must happen. But if the misdeed happens, true repentance exists, and you have told no one and no one has seen it, there's an entire different reaction from God. God can afford to be infinitely more compassionate because there is no knock-on effect on anyone else. There is no message that needs to be sent to anyone except you and your relationship with God, right? But there are very strict rules to this. It can never be externalized because the minute it is, you've broken that principle. Now it's affecting the others again. And then the consequence follows immediately. You understand? It's culture management. Because he's not the guru of one person, he's the guru of all of us simultaneously. And so what he does for one person always, 99% of the time, ends up affecting others too. Because you hear about it, you see it. It has impact on you indirectly. So the decision he makes cannot be only about him and you. The decision he makes is about him, you, and everyone who will know about it. So the more we gossip and the more we talk, the more we are eliminating the possibility for compassion. Literally. Because it's no longer private matters between you and God. It's a public affair now. And a public affair must be dealt with in the public square. And an example must be set so that everyone knows how to behave moving forward. Understand? And so there is the black and the white and this hidden gray zone. And the hidden gray zone is the one that happens only between you and God, you and Guruji, and no one else participates in that. And no one else matters in that. But it's your duty to keep it that way. You are your own worst enemy when it comes to that. Now, am I saying that this is an encouragement for you to break rules? No, of course not. This is an explanation of reality. Yeah, your relationship with God. You may think your relationship with Him is private. It's not, insofar as you make it public. Yeah. There's a reason why he says sometimes not every experience needs to be shared. Yeah. There's a reason he always points towards our relationship with God and our realization with God starting inside. And from inside, it can expand outward. Focus on the relationship in the chamber of your heart with Him, because that's just between you and Him. Do you know how many people have come to him and said, Guruji, I wish I could be like this way and that way with you externally. That we could spend more time physically together, that I could come and give you a hug. And he says, do it in your heart. I'm there. But out here, I can't grant you those things. Because out here, if we do that, 100 eyes are now burning in jealousy. It's not just between me and you. That act of my hug to you, I have to make that hug in mind of the impact that that hug is going to have on 100 different souls. It's not so simple. But in here, we can do whatever because no one's watching. Understand? In the chamber of your heart, God is for you and for you alone. In the Rasa Leela, every gopi had a Krishna. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't gopis looking at other gopis with Krishna. Every gopi had a Krishna. In Dwaraka, every wife had a Krishna in their palace. There were 16,108 wives. There were 16,108 Krishnas in Dwaraka. Understand? I'll leave it there before I get into trouble. So, that was the story of Baba Ram Rai. He was excommunicated because he changed the Gurbani, the word of the Guru. Okay? There was another story followed shortly after. His disciples were once going on a walk with Guru Har Rai and they asked him, is there still value in reading the Gurbani, the word of the Guru, if we don't understand it? And I'm sure many of us can relate to this. Like if we study scripture, we hear satsang, or we read this Tadatmya book that will come out, and we don't understand anything, is there still value to it? Is there still a point to it? Right? And Guru Har Rai gave a really nice response. So he said, he didn't respond immediately. He said, let's continue walking. And as they continued walking, they came across broken pots that used to contain butter. So they were butter pots, but they were broken, and the butter was still clinging to the pots. And so he says, look, my Sikhs, broken pot shards. When they are heated, the butter that adhered to them readily melts. As the grease adheres to the pot shards, so too do the Guru's hymns to the hearts of his Sikhs. At the hour of death, the Guru's instruction shall assuredly bear fruit. Whether understood or not, it has within it the seed of salvation. Perfume still clings to a broken vase. Right? So it's the idea that as you are doing this, as you are studying, as you are reading, as you are engaging with the sadhana, it's all clinging to you like the butter to that pot. Even if it's a broken pot, even if you're a broken pot, you don't understand anything, you don't know how to hold things well, it's all clinging to you. And when the right time comes, the sun will shine on you and melt that butter, and it will infuse itself into the pot. Understand? That which has clung to you throughout your spiritual journey will bear its fruit at the right time. I'll give you an analogy, or an example rather, to explain this. Imagine a child is being given a book to read and they can't read yet. Why they can't read? Because they don't yet have the cognitive ability. Right? Imagine telling the child, oh, then just give up. Don't bother trying. Because you can't understand, so don't bother. You wouldn't do that, right? But why? Because you have the understanding that with practice and time, the understanding will come. It's how we all arrived at the situation we're in now. So the same thing, imagine telling an aspiring devotee, oh, give up, don't bother studying, don't bother reading, don't bother any of these things, because you can't understand it today. But the same way that the child has to develop its cognitive ability, the devotee will develop not necessarily your cognitive ability, you have that. You will develop the spiritual maturity that one day, that which you had received clicks and it makes sense for you. And you pick up a Bhagavad Gita and you read it and you go, ah, I hadn't thought of that before. I hadn't understood that before. I hadn't had this realization. And the same thing will continuously happen at different levels as you continue to grow. And so you can never give up and you can never stop. Guruji shared recently with one of his devotees a very important lesson. He said to him, if you think too highly of yourself, you will see everyone else overlap you very soon. Because by thinking yourself so high, you will stop studying, stop trying, stop growing, because you think you're great. And everyone else who doesn't think that way will overtake you, right? And sometimes I know people struggle and they stop Because they don't see the immediate progress, the immediate results. They don't immediately grasp it. And so they think, why? It's so tiring, it's so cumbersome, and it doesn't make me feel good. Reading something and not understanding it doesn't make you feel good. Practicing a bhajan, singing it and only feeling nervousness and fear and no love doesn't feel good. Sitting and doing kriya and having a sore back and not seeing the Atma doesn't feel good. Right? Does it mean you should give up? No. So this was the answer the Guru Har Rai gave to his disciples. When the right time comes, it will bear its fruit. The sun will shine and will melt that butter. And it will infuse itself into that pot. So what was the legacy of Guru Har Rai in his short life? He established an Ayurvedic hospital and research center at Kiratpur Sahib. He offered holistic healing to those in need. His care for animals was evident because he maintained the animal sanctuary at the same location. He ordered that any place providing langar, so langar was the food distribution system that had been established by Guru Nanak, so that they would cook and distribute food to the needy, right? Guru Har Rai, he had ordered that any place that is giving langar should also provide free health care. So he was establishing these hubs of care, right? He established 360 missionary centers to spread the Sikh teachings. 360. He died at 31. He reformed the corrupt Masan system. The Masan system it's actually tithing. So it's the idea of giving 10% of your income, your resources to the Guru, to the organization, right? And so they had that too, but they had Masan collectors, so people who would go and collect these taxes from the community, right? But what happens when people are tasked with collecting money? I mean, I don't know, what could it possibly be, right? So a little bit of abuse creeps in, people misuse funds, and so what he did, he actually started putting some of his most exalted devotees as the tax collectors. So he said, you cannot trust this onto someone without the spiritual compass needed. And so he actually, unlike many would say that, oh, the more spiritual you become, the more you should not be involved in these matters, he said the opposite. He said, actually, the more spiritually evolved you are, the more I can trust you in these matters. Right? Because the human nature is human nature. Only one who has a little more control over that human nature can do something like this honestly. Right? So he did that as well. And Guru Har Rai passed on the guruship to his youngest son, Guru Har Krishan Sahib, who was 5 years old at the time. On October 20th, 1661, and he passed away the same day. So he died at 31. On that day of his death, he bowed down to his son, who was 5 years old, and said, you are the next Guru. And his son passed away very young also. So he was only the Guru for a very short time, and he died in his youth. But actually, his son, Guru Har Krishan Sahib, was, by all accounts, a remarkable youth, remarkable being. Again, far, far, far beyond his years. And I said at the beginning of the lecture that I wanted to touch on that a little later. The concept of time and age, right? Just like I said to you earlier when it came to the story of Baba Ram Rai, that one of the lenses with which we look at a story like this is through the conventional societal lens of he's his son. How could he do that to his son, right? And I told you that that isn't the right lens to look at it from, because in the spiritual relationships, those material relationships aren't relevant in some sense, yeah? The same thing is true. If we are genuinely talking about a spiritual community, then age is also irrelevant. Because these are material concepts. Age is a material concept, family is a material concept in the bloodline type family, right? These are all material concepts. What is really the reason why we respect age? Why do we respect an elder? Wisdom, experience, right? That's usually what it's about, wisdom and experience. We respect that they have more experience. We respect that they have wisdom. We may also respect that they have laid the foundation, the groundworks for us to be able to prosper, for us to be able to have the privileges that we have. And so we give thanks. But that's gratitude. That's gratitude. That's different. That's not saying they are great. That's saying I'm grateful for what they have provided, for what they have done. But a terrible human being who's very selfish can also set foundations for you to prosper. It's also possible. You may inherit millions from your crook father, who was a mafioso, right? And you have used those millions now to do good in the world. It's possible. You can be grateful for that, and you should be. But that doesn't mean that you're looking up to him for his wisdom and experience and whatever else. Understand? And so what is it really coming down to? What is it condensed down to is experience and wisdom. Now, how much experience is enough experience? Anyone knows? I agree with that, actually. I think it's the answer to how much experience is enough experience is whatever is enough to grant you the wisdom you need, the confidence, the strength you need to act as you should. So if someone learns the lesson in one day, they've learned the lesson. They're as wise as one who took 10,000 days to learn it. Because they've learned the lesson. Some people learn faster than others. I'll tell you why I learned that. When I'm young, relatively speaking, although Guruji likes to say that I'm not. Every time it's my birthday, he says, "How old are you today?" And I say the number, and he's always shocked. He's like, "No." I say, "Yeah, Guruji." He's like, "But you feel so old." It's like, it's useful in my job. He was like, "Yeah." In any case, the experience was, I was in a situation where I felt like I was stuck in the middle. What I mean by that is middle generation. I was in a meeting once with some elder Swamis of Bhakti Marga who have been Swamis longer than me and who are older than me physically, and another Swami who is younger than me and who has been here less than me in Bhakti Marga. And so I was looking at both, right? And I could see on the one side, there was this feeling of respect your elders. Okay? Because the younger one was a little bold. Let's put it like this, yeah? Not afraid to say his opinion with a lot of confidence. And this one was saying, yeah, you've been around 5 minutes. Yeah. You may be a Swami, but you've been around 5 minutes. I've been around for a very long time. Experience. Yeah? And this one was saying, okay, true, but if in the shorter amount of time that I've been here, I've already exceeded you in certain points, what is the value of all that time you spent here? Now, he didn't say it in those words, I'm paraphrasing. But it was the point, okay? It was very much the point. And I was sitting in this middle going, well, it's also a good point, right? And I decided to do what I think is generally the wise thing to do, is to observe Guruji, how he handles that kind of scenario, right? Because I've seen Guruji show a lot of respect to experience and longevity, right? And I've seen him elevate people that have been here for 5 minutes into extreme positions of responsibility immediately. Also, irrespective of their experience. He made Swami Keshava a Swami at 18 years old, right? And immediately he's a community leader. Okay? You think he had any experience of leading communities at 18 years old? Yes? No? No, I don't think so. Right? Currently, he's the head Swami of Sri Nilaya. I just live here under his rule. Right? I'm serious. Swami Keshava is the head of SPN under Guruji. Okay? You think he has experience and qualification to do this? Materially speaking? Of course not. And he would not be in the slightest offended by me saying this, right? And yet, do I think he's unqualified to do this? Absolutely not. So what gives? Is it time? Is it years? Or is it something else? Spiritual maturity, perhaps, which is not measured in years. It's not measured in material experience, but rather spiritual experience, which is perhaps something measured entirely differently. And you can make huge leaps in short amount of time. You see, I think we need to let go of our worldly structures. And we need to let go of worldly structures and replace them by spiritual structures. And in that spiritual structure, there is room for a bit of everything. As I had said, Guruji respects experience. He respects longevity. He respects loyalty. He respects all of those things tremendously. But he does not respect given for respect's sake. And what I mean by that is respect that is not earned and deserved, but just given because, it's kind of a societal norm, right? I'll never forget. One time we were in France, me, Guruji, and Swami Vijay, who is noticeably older than Guruji, right? And we were in a church, the three of us. I was on my phone, minding my business. By the way, if you ever hear Guruji give a satsang about some Swami that's always on his phone, it's me, okay? So I was there on my phone, and I noticed at some point that they start to having a bit of an argument, right? And at some point, Guruji just snaps, right? And he shouts at him and he's telling him off and he says, "You behave yourself, old man," right? And there was an old French lady in the church and she sees this and she's absolutely horrified. She's like, and she goes to Guruji, she's like, "Sir, you cannot behave like this with your elders. You have to respect this man." And da 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 da. And Guruji looks at her and is like, "I don't have to respect anybody. You go away, you old woman." And I loved it. I was just like, this is so good. This is so good. I was younger also, so I was like, this is even better. This is like... Because Swami Vijay was Guruji's junior, not his senior, in spiritual sense, right? Materially, he's older. Who cares? That just means he was born earlier. What does it really mean? You understand my point? Nothing, really, nothing. Not when it comes to these matters, nothing. Guruji is younger. Who cares? He's eternal. You're eternal. We're all eternal. There's no young soul, old soul. You are what you are where you are at the level you are. And nothing's going to change that. No title, no label, no white hair, no beard, no wrinkles, no baby skin. It is what it is. And you either accept it as it is or you don't. And Guru Har Rai named his 5-year-old son the next Guru. What do you think the Sikh community did with a 5-year-old Guru? I think it must have been challenging. I think it must have been very challenging. When I was 24 years old, Guruji came to me and he said, "I want you to train the next batch of Swamis." I wasn't a Swami. And I said, okay. I mean, I pretty much said okay quickly also because I probably thought I was qualified enough to be a Swami, but I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. I sit in the room, day one of the training, there are 12 Swami candidates in front of me. They're all older than me. And I'm not an orange. And they look at me. And they're like, there's at least 5 Swamis in this ashram. Why are they not training us? And I said, well, welcome to class 1. And by the end of class 2, I had kicked 2 of them out of the training. Not living up to my standards. And they were thinking, what standards? You're a child, you're not a Swami. What bloody standards do you have? And I said, my standards, get out. I think one of them has still not forgiven me. What to do? Eventually, one of them had the courage to say, can I just be honest with you? You're like young and not an orange, and it's really hard for me to listen to you. I said, thank you for your honesty. I get it. If I was in your shoes, I'd hate this. I get it. But what do you want me to do about it? Go and tell Guruji he's wrong? Be my guest. Sits there and swallows it. Okay, fine, let's do it. The story had a funny end, but we don't have time for that. No, we don't. Really, we don't. So, let's move on. Got the point? Forget about age. Forget about social structures when it comes to spiritual life. It's a different playing field. It's a very different thing. Yeah? Respect everybody. Don't get me wrong. Look for knowledge and wisdom where you find it. It's good. But don't be constrained by this. Don't follow these patterns as if that is the only way it works. You can have a 5-year-old guru leading an entire religion. Yeah? You can have an 18-year-old Swami leading communities. It's all possible. It's not about this. Yeah? So, I want to present some relevant teachings. They're not necessarily from Guru Har Rai. So they're teachings from Guruji and from the Guru Granth Sahib, from the scripture, that I think are very relevant to some of the points we touched upon today. And I just want to sit with them a little bit with you guys for about 10 minutes before we break off for lunch, okay? I just wanted to show you some parallels and some of the sentiments before we go. So we talked about compassion. Do you remember the story I told you about what he did for the son of Emperor Shah Jahan? Right? So he gave him medicine even though he was his enemy. He had no need to. He was criticized for it. What does he say? We respond to evil with good. Like the tree, the sandalwood tree perfumes the axe that cuts it down. Right? So in the Guru Granth Sahib, Ang 15, it says, Nanak seeks the company of the lowest of the low class. The very lowest of the low. Why should he try to compete with the great? Right? This is Guru Nanak speaking about himself. He says, I don't compete with the great ones. I just want the lowly people. Do you think he means poor people? And do you think he means the great people or the rich people? No. Once again, why? Because I'm trying to tell you, forget about material constructs. About age, about experience, about wealth. All of this is not relevant. It's about spiritual maturity. Those who think themselves to be great spiritually, those who think I am amazing, I am this, that, and the other, Nanak has no interest, because what will he do? Fight you? Try to convince you that you're not great? Life will do that for him. He doesn't need to do anything. So he's interested in who? Those who have humbled themselves. I'm here for the company of the very low, the lowest of the low. Meaning the stupid, the ignorant, nothing to do with that. It means the humble, the lowest of the low. So sometimes people think that to be the lowest of the low in spiritual senses is that you have to be like just an ignorant fool and very innocent and very this, that, and the other. You can be the most qualified, skilled, intelligent person in the world and still be the lowest of the low. It's a mindset, it's a heart state, it's a state of consciousness. It's a perception of self. And you can be the most unqualified, ignorant person and think, I am the greatest. Yeah, it's all possible. But here you see, and again, we know Guruji is the same way. What does Guruji always say? The number one quality that attracts God is humility. The humility needed. Guru Granth Sahib, Ang 1102, become the dust of the feet of all, and then you may come to me. So says the Guru. Become the dust of the feet of all, and then you can come to me. Same sentiment, right? You become down there. Then you're ready for this relationship. Guruji is so merciful that he doesn't wait for us to become the dust. He makes us the dust. It's true. It's true. Do you know how lucky we are? Because he sets the bar so low. He says, come to me as you are. I will make you as you should be. But he won't do it forever. He won't. And I don't just mean when he leaves his body. Right? Because it takes a lot of time and effort to make you into dust. And once you're dust, there's still a lot of work to be done. Right? You heard what he said, Christmas, right? I will take my distance. What he means is that I cannot do it all for you. I cannot be so available, so easy, that you can come any old way and I will make you good. No, you've got to do your part much more. You have to come as the dust. You have to come ready and primed. Then I can give you what you need to achieve what is next. We need to go to the next level of collaboration. It cannot be so much on his shoulders. Like that, we will go nowhere fast. Yeah, there needs to be an increase of responsibility on our side. And yet, I will tell you, for 30 plus years, he has accepted us however we are and tried to make dust out of us. Yeah? Time changes all things. It's all good. The Guru's word. Guru Ram Das, one of the other Sikh Gurus, says, the word is the Guru and the Guru is the word, and in the word is the essence of ambrosia. Please think how often people separate the Guru, the person, from his word, from his teachings. It happens more often than you would imagine. I know many devotees who in their history have uttered things like, I love Guruji, but I don't agree with this or I don't agree with that. Or I am loyal to Guruji, I fully surrender to him. But then there's something he has said or something that he has asked of us that, oh, but this doesn't really, this doesn't fit with me so well. This doesn't make sense for me. It's not really my thing, right? And I try to argue with these people and say, if that's not your thing, then maybe Guruji isn't your thing. And they say, whoa, 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 what are you saying? And I'm like, I'm sorry to be provocative, but the distinction you seem to be making between him and his word doesn't exist. This separation that you're trying to create between him and his word, it doesn't exist. It's not real. It's one and the same. And so you can't say I'm a big fan of this, but I'm not a fan of this. Then just say the whole, that I'm not yet a full fan of the whole thing. There's parts of Guruji that I'm attracted to and parts of him that I'm not. But don't try to make some weird separation, right, between the word and him, because it doesn't exist. And you can start to understand why Guru Har Rai had the position he had towards his son. Because the word of the Guru, the Gurbani, is not different from the Guru himself. And so when he stood there and basically changed the Gurbani, lied about what it was, he essentially changed the Guru. Said, my Guru is not this, he's actually this. Right? And I've had a conversation with Guruji before, where he says to me, I know every single devotee that has ever denied me in front of anyone. I said, what do you mean? He's like, there are circumstances where my devotees in the world are challenged. And some of them stand for what they believe, and some of them pretend like they don't have a guru, they don't have this path, or that I am something other than what I am. Why? Because it's more convenient that way. And I know every single one who's done it, when and where. Now, I will be fair. There are circumstances that I'm sure even he would accept. Because I know he has. I've seen him do it. There are circumstances he would accept. But I will also be fair. There are circumstances that he would not. Okay? It's for you to figure that out. That's got nothing to do with me or anyone else to judge anyone. I might have done it for all I know. I didn't ask, am I on that list? I might be. I don't know. Yeah? I don't know to what level he takes it. Does it also count if it's done in the mind and not only in words? I don't know. But things to reflect on. Look what Guruji said. This is where I really wanted to end today. This is Guruji's words from his most recent Guru Gita commentary that he did a few months ago. He said, instead of celebrating the different ways that the Satguru shows his love for everyone, one starts fighting and arguing about which way is better. Can anything be more foolish? Do the Bhaktas realize how much this hurts the heart? When the Bhaktas hurt each other, actually the heart of the Satguru is hurt, because then one has not really understood the true message of love. As I said earlier, when we look at each of us and say, oh, there's all gods standing in front of me and Guruji's in front of me, it's hard. It's intimidating, difficult, right? And yet, when you hear something like this, if you don't realize the hurt it causes him when we hurt each other, then you haven't understood his message of love. That hits me a little too deep for me to ignore. Because I don't want to wake up thinking I have not understood my Guru's message of love. Because if I haven't, then what is the point of my life? What am I doing here? Talking to you, teaching, living this, trying to achieve something with my life? And if he puts the challenge in front of me and says, you want to follow me, this is how hard it's going to be. You can't hurt anyone because it's going to hurt me. Then I have to accept that challenge. And it's not easy. Because some of you people have really soft skin and get hurt a bit too easily, which makes my job even harder. Because I have to talk sometimes, and sometimes I feel like I need to give everybody a kick in the behind. And then they tell me that they got offended by what I said, and I think, and maybe one day I'll end up just coming here and only speaking sweet words of honey, because there's no other way to avoid hurting my Guru's heart. I don't know. I do think we should all get a little thicker skin, because sometimes we allow ourselves to get hurt because we put our emotions first, we put our ego first. And if we put our well-being first, we would actually say thank you. I'm not saying that only about what I have to say. I'm talking about life. Life is a guru, right? Sometimes we would say thank you for the tough moments that life brings us, because it pushes us to become who we have to be, rather than to say, oh, bad life, you hurt me, right? But complete parallel, right, between what Guruji said and what Guru Hargobind told to Guru Har Rai. Don't hurt the heart of anyone, because the Lord sits in there. Don't break anyone's heart. Remember when we talked about that in the beginning? Guru Hargobind said this to Guru Har Rai. Guru Har Rai is shaped by this. His whole being is shaped by this. And Guruji, a few months ago, Guru Gita commentary says the same. Can anything be more foolish than the devotees comparing which relationship with Guru is better? Because with one disciple, the Guru is one way, and with another disciple, he's a different way, and we try to argue which one is better. Yeah. So, that was it for today. Guru Har Rai Ji, very inspiring. A lot of jewels in there, even in the simple things, like we talked about the garden. You know, even in the most simple acts that seemingly don't have much spiritual weight, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, a lot of benefit to be derived. Yeah. So, Jai Gurudev, everybody.